So next meeting is November 6th at 6 p.m. Let's see. Correspondence. I just received, as I was leaving the house, a letter from Pam Demarest. I guess I should read. She asked that I read this, that be read into the meeting. It's regarding Big Ram dock application.
You want to wait
until we get
into the minutes? So
yeah, because then that,
you have to leave twice.
You have to leave, yeah. So that other correspondence, we will we'll hold off till we get to that application. Any other correspondence? No. Christine, did we receive anything else on Prager?
No.
Town liaisons have anything yet?
No. Say, John, publicly, I would just like to, the record that I don't view John as chairman of the WNIC. I've always viewed him for the last 8 years as a personal friend. And I appreciate having him as a friend, having him as a colleague, and I didn't like the way that it ended up being, obviously, and if I had any small part to play in that, John, I want to publicly say, whatever I might have done, I'd be very sorry to say. Oh, no. But anyhow, I just wanted to get that out. It's a great committee, and John has been a professional person that has tried his best to steer this committee in the right direction. And the other thing I would say, since I thank you for not sitting next to me from a distance, so there's no misinterpretation of anything here. But I think that was a misunderstanding last time. I'm surely not speaking, for any one applicant at all, but it was just a question of I wanted to try to expedite this thing, get this thing done as soon as we possibly can, and to identify whatever, and that goes for any application. That does not have to do with this one single application, but to improve lines of communication, identify problems that need to be addressed, address them, and make sure that the clerk's office knows exactly what we're looking for, and and it's incumbent upon everybody to work together to try to expedite these things as much as we possibly can. Those are the 2 or 3 things that I wanted to say, and I'm just thankful you did.
Yeah, can I just say, I don't have any malice toward anybody. The committee members, the liaisons, I kind of greatest respect for all of you. Just found I needed to make a decision. I haven't made a lot in my life. I had the same job for 50 years. I think we basically make a decision to enjoy myself and not be stressed out. So.
And that's why I'm not running for office. Enjoy myself, recognize how old I am, and to move on in my life. So, thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity to just say that. Thank you.
Bill.
I think we all agree with you.
Yeah, just one update, if I may. The town attorney has been working with the village of Newton Harbor's attorney to come up with an intermunicipal agreement on mooring management for the bottom that the village owns in Deering Horse. So you'll probably get a copy of that, and we'll email it to the committee, and you'll have just some period of time to comment on it, back to the attorney.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
It's actually the same thing we've always been doing, it's just getting it written down,
Right.
Okay. That's good. Oh, you have,
Yeah, I'll come up for a minute if that's all right. It'll take a few moments of time. Yeah, so just to speak about that for a quick second, the Village of Deering Harbor thing, right? So you're looking to codify, and John, just correct me if I'm wrong, but they're have historically exerted home rule 500 feet out from mean high water in their jurisdiction. I believe the home rule actually typically grants 1,500 feet. Obviously, that incorporates a lot of conflicts with the waters that the town has historically managed there. So for a very long time, it's been 500 feet, and to the best of my knowledge, I've drew up a couple of little maps for them, but I haven't really been involved beyond that. That's the intent, is to just enumerate, codify, and make sure that everybody is all on the same page with that. So we're all working together to try and make sure that's solidified. John had some questions, and I don't know, did that come, like, how did that come about? John asked me to speak to a perceived issue that occurred over the Labor Day weekend, I guess Sunday specifically, Sunday, Monday?
I had 3 boats on the state.
Right, so there was, I guess, some sort of issue that I don't know if
Kind
there was
of
a
hanging
complaint.
out of the
Was there-
air.
Right, I don't know if there was complaints or not.
There was.
I personally didn't see any people that had called to complain, like as in to dispatch us. However, I guess there's somebody or somewhere, there's a belief that there was a number of boats that were outside of the designated anchorage in West Neck. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody knows what I'm talking about? Okay.
I know that a certain party had done some research on it,
Okay.
given us that feedback.
Gotcha, okay. So somewhere there's a person asserting that, so that's fine. We have 2 patrol boats, right? We have 3, now 3. Peter Vealbig was one of our part-time guys. He retired at the end of September, the beginning of September, the end of the season. So we have 2 boats and now 3 officers, 2 full-time officers, 1 part-time officer, right? The part-time officer works Saturday and Sunday only from like May 15th to yesterday. The 2 full-time officers, Butch and I, to put names on them, we work our schedules so that way there's a full-time officer on duty 7 days a week. That leads us to overlap on Saturdays. So we have 3 officers on Saturday detailed to 2 patrol vessels. Obviously, we're not going to put 3 individuals on 1 boat. One boat happens to be bigger than the other, so we put 2 officers on, typically 2 officers on the bigger boat and 1 officer on the smaller boat. And then we cover the island typically in opposite directions, just roving patrol. You all have seen us out somewhere along the way. And then in the meantime, respond to whatever calls we get, Southold gets, Southampton, East Hampton, Sag Harbor, anybody who needs help, we're there for that. So during the day, as we're cruising around, I should clarify, on Saturdays and Sundays and Mondays that are holidays, the first officer comes on at 7 a.m., the last officer goes off at 7 p.m. So we have very broad coverage all day long on those days. Typically, there's a boat underway from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., right? So that's how that all kind of breaks down. While we're cruising around, we keep an eye on the anchorages, 2 designated anchorages. For those of you who don't know, right, non-residents have to be anchored inside designated anchorage within Cockles Harbor and West Neck Harbor. Non-residents are not allowed to anchor in Deering Harbor. So as we're cruising around, we go and check on boats that appear to be outside of the anchorage, provided that we have a lawful reason to approach them. We go up to them and we see where they're coming from, usually. It's pretty simple process. A lot of times we can tell immediately because the vessel is home ported someplace, but not all the time. If the vessel's home ported on Shelter Island, we simply drive right by them because they are allowed to anchor anywhere they like for that period of time. A couple of days, actually, to be honest with you. So they don't have to be inside the anchorage. That creates a very, very complicated visual scenario for us, for passersby, for people who may be irritated by that. And it's really, really complicated for people who are coming into the harbor looking for a place to anchor. So more often than not, there will be a resident or multiple residents who exercise their privilege to anchor wherever they like. They will anchor very, very close to, but outside of the designated anchorage. Anybody that's been in West Neck knows that the preferred location for many locals is between the west edge of the anchorage and the east edge of the mooring grid that's there. I don't know why, it's a beautiful spot, but that's how it works. Resident comes and drops anchor, boat comes in, sees boat anchored, says, oh, this is a great spot to anchor, we're gonna anchor next to them. Obviously, we're not sitting at any of those anchorages all of the 9 or 10 hours that we're on active patrol. So this week, we'll come out, we'll clean that up, get it sorted out. If there's a resident in that mix, then they're allowed to stay there. And then the process begins all over again as soon as we turn the boat around. The next boat comes in, sees the same thing. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't know. More often than not, it's my belief anyway. I talk to a lot of people all summer, and I rarely tell the same person twice about that. We hand out every interaction, we hand out, or we try to do it with every interaction, we hand out our boater's guide, which explains all the regulations for the anchorage and every other water-related regulation that we have. And almost always people are, oh, I'm so sorry, and they pick up anchor and they go move. We wrote, I think, 1 or 2 tickets this summer for anchoring up in West Neck Bay to a commercial entity that had been advised of the laws at least 5 times. I personally advised the owner of the company 5 times. So their captains started getting tickets this summer because they were not able to comply. But with that said, obviously on busy days, there's times when we may leave West Neck Harbor and no boat will get back to it for several hours, if at all. It depends on what's going on, right? We have obviously a fair amount of area to cover for 2 boats. And there are a few other things that come up along the way. Specifically, I looked at the calls on Sunday. I wasn't working on Sunday, so I can't speak with certainty, but it looked like it was a fairly busy day just based on the calls for service and the number of officer-initiated stops that we had. I did note that there was both boats had taken, we call them blotters, right? They're little document numbers. It's what you read about in police blotter, right? They had taken blotters for checking, both officers had checked both anchorages throughout the day. So at one time or another, somewhere through the day, there were 4 checks of those 2 anchorages. That same day, there was also a water rescue off of Crab Creek area over there. And that was at 1:37 in the afternoon. So I'm not quite sure what time, whatever was going on, but I would respectfully submit that going and pulling a body out of the water before they become a body is slightly higher on the priority list for the patrol boats at that particular moment in time. So we do the best we can with the anchorage. It really does require more time to effectively manage than we currently are able to give it. I mean, realistically, you probably have to have somebody there pretty much all the time. I can't speak for the department specifically, but I would be a huge proponent of taking a look at the code related to residents being able to anchor wherever they like during that period of time, because it really adds a very, very, very deep layer of complexity that people just can't really wrap their heads around. Unfortunately, the anchoring code was recently briefly reviewed and very, very briefly updated. And despite my suggestion, that was not looked at as part of that. So hopefully, going forward, there'll be an opportunity to look at that. But I don't know if there's any other specifics that you wanted to try and get at for that, but you're good. Okay, yeah, no, I mean, and what I would suggest is whoever the caller is or complainant is, if you will, Billy, I've done this to you 1,000 times, right? You'll send me a text message, hey, heads up, something's going on. Call the police, right? Like the reason that I do that is not to be a jerk. I've done it to Tommy Fields as well. It's to follow the process so we can adequately document it and then demonstrate whether or not there's a need to look further into those things. Because if they don't call and it's not documented, then it's never happened. It just has never happened. Unfortunately, but that is the way it works.
Do you notice, especially in West Neck, that there seems to be a profusion of boats, in the middle to, late afternoon, and they sort of depart.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
So the main, overnight transient load is much reduced from, that mid-afternoon Sunday when all the sunfish are sailing around and this and that and everything's going on at once.
Yeah.
So, it's a sporadic problem. I mean.
Right,
it's
yes, that's exactly right. It's largely dependent on the type of boating that's going on, right? And
If I were to say, I'd say that in my experience, there's less action in the anchorages than in times way past.
Yeah.
I mean, do you ever work in conjunction with the land forces? I mean, and if they're going out to check beach passes on Shell Beach or something, do they ever, take their glasses out and take a look and see if there's anybody in?
That's actually a good point. We have coordinated with TCOs, right? Specifically
Right.
TCOs, because they're the ones driving around, traffic control officers, the ones driving around looking at beach passes. More frequently, and again, they spend more time in these areas, so that's why it's kind of biased that way. More often, we'll get reports from them regarding like the swim area at Crescent, right? Obviously, they spend more time down there than they do in the other locations. We don't usually get much in the way of a call from them for people outside of the anchorage, because again, they have no idea. Like they don't even know where the anchorage is.
Well, maybe it's a little
Right.
educational thing that they should maybe learn,
Right,
I mean,
right.
and use them to their full capacity.
Sure.
And they may not be able to see what the hailing port is, but they could say, hey, there's 8 boats that I see that I perceive to be outside the anchorage in West Neck.
Yeah.
So maybe when you're making your rounds, just take a look.
It's definitely, it's a great suggestion, and we can, whoever our new TCO is next year, we can certainly look into at least making them aware that this is a possibility, that this is going on. And I would the only asterisk I would put next to that, James, is we are keenly aware that there are always boats outside the anchorage. I know that we're always heading back to one of those harbors without a doubt. We're gonna go check Crescent, and then we're gonna come back here. We're gonna go over to, Cornelius Point, and we're gonna come back into there. So, but
Essentially,
an extra set of eyes doesn't hurt.
15-day problem,
Right.
340 days a year is not a problem.
Right.
So it's.
To your point about the load shifting, we've all seen it, right? The load pretty much starts to build around 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It peaks somewhere around 3:30. And then more often than not, there's just 2 groups of people who are outside the anchorage. One are day boating, and they have little to no idea that they are outside or shouldn't be. It doesn't help that several of the charts depict the anchorage incorrectly. So that doesn't help. That's something that we've entertained trying to work with Navionics, but obviously most systems are static and not frequently refreshed. But nonetheless, that is something that is on our winter project list. So you have the day boaters who really don't know what's going on, and then you have the overnighters who are waiting for vacancy in the anchorage. And as soon as there's room, they slide down and in.
How about signage on the market buoys?
Yeah, so we have a sign when you come in the harbor. Most people have never seen it. It's been there forever.
Buoys are gonna designate the area and notify people where the line is.
Right, so we do
There's
that,
a bunch of
right?
buoys.
Yeah, and we added buoys this year. We added bigger buoys this year. So now it's like, there's a lot of buoys out there. I don't know that that helped a lot other than,
But I mean, a sign on the buoy.
yeah, it's a possibility. We've tried that before with no wake buoys and put like a big sign on it. So yeah, anything's possible. It does say on the buoy, right, anchor area already. So bigger buoys, more buoys. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to try and tweak it. And again, like I said, we added 2 enormous, by comparison, buoys this year. So then that filtered in, you know, I think we have 7 in that one little area in West Neck now. So yeah, we're open to suggestion without a doubt, like.
Is there any way do you have the ability to know who you gave warnings to? I mean, did some of the boat registration come up and say, well, we gave them a warning
Well, yeah, well,
Is that a
there is a way, right?
without
and-
killing everybody?
That's it. So, you know, if I'm interacting, let's just say hypothetically, on a busy day, on one check, we might interact with, I don't know, anywhere from 12 to 16 boats
Right.
at that particular interaction. Again, we're trying to move swiftly through this process and get everybody going so we can get to the next one and go to the next location. So we don't do a particularly good job of keeping track of who's who, other than the fact that boats and boats' names and individual faces are fairly unique. There is some circumstances where John will have gone and spoke to somebody, and then I come along and, oh, we've never heard before, right? So, of course, that's always gonna happen, and in those circumstances, if we get to a point, then there's always enforcement action as an option, right? Like,
Right, I think,
the idea is compliance, not enforcement, right? We want
you know,
people to
how many beach permit, you know, violations are given in a year?
Lots.
Lots. You know, so, I mean, I'm not saying we should be the evil empire and try to, you know, get as much money as we can from people, but, you know, if some boat is a recurrent problem, you know,
Yeah,
like a commercial guy,
Right.
you know, if there was an easy way to, you know, oh, you know, like this, you know, you plug the reg number in and, oh, it comes up, we warned him like 3-4 times, you know?
Yeah, so we carry a little notebook for stuff like that, right? Just a little scratch pad most of the time.
Something like I do.
Yeah, well, we're on a boat, right? So in the salt water. And
Right,
there's
no, I
not
get
a
it.
lot of-
Okay.
But yeah, there probably, I'm not even gonna say probably, there is ways that we could do a better job of tracking that. I personally don't believe that we deal with that many individuals a second or third.
Right, so that's, you know, just to placate.
Right, it'd be a good way to find out, you know, like without a doubt. And unfortunately, like in the commercial application that I talked about before, it was actually a captain who had never been warned before. Like he had absolutely no idea. But I had warned the captain on that boat the day before. And like I said, I personally spoke to the owner of the company, personally made sure that he had the brochure, asked him to, you know, oh, we're gonna send this to all our captains. And so, you know, he had to pay for his guy to come to court one day. So I didn't see him in there after the second ticket. So maybe that worked.
Hello?
Yep.
Do you have any idea about, are there like sort of groups of boats, or like, is there a particular location where people are coming from? So is it a lot of people from Sag
Sag
Harbor?
Harbor.
or
Sag
South-
Harbor.
It is? So is there,
Sag
like-
Harbor.
I'm wondering if there's like, you know, a way to integrate our sort of like little printed resource booklet with, you know, outreach over there. So you're sort of trying to stop it at the source. And so people are aware and they know before they even start. So you don't have to go and fix the problem afterwards. As you said, it's
Are these,
about compliance rather than enforcement, you know?
So that's exactly what I was getting at with the commercial provider that I already referred to. And then the other thing that we started to do was, if it's a rental boat, like Boat Club, I asked them to leave the brochure on the boat when they're done for the day. So that way maybe the next operator will figure it out. And then we've also asked them to hand them off to their slip meets at whatever marina they're in. Hey, what marina are you coming out of? Can you make sure that this is around there? But more proactive approach next year would be certainly try to reach out to some of those marinas and get our information out there ahead of time.
Thank you.
So the commercial people are not the people who have a sort of a base at Island Boatyard?
No.
That's a different one?
Yep. No, they were warned once this summer.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they were not there again, and to the best of my knowledge.
Right.
As a reminder, just call, right?
Yep.
0600, if it's not an emergency, call, it documents it. That's really the way that we want to go. The only other thing I had for you guys, just real quick, obviously we're going on. John, from the police department, thank you for all of your years of service. Incredible, right? Like, I mean, it was great work. I didn't work with you that long, but absolutely fantastic. And if I may, I'm gonna use your departure to prod the WMAC. Again, I did this when Mike left. We need to institutionalize your bodies of knowledge. You can't work for 26 years on things and leave voluntarily or otherwise and have that work disappear to the sands of times. You guys are doing too much, you're trying too hard. So we need to move forward and think about how we're going to institutionalize and codify all of this, these bits and pieces that everybody has, and make sure that that remains in the WMAC regardless of when this member or that member vacates or moves on or does whatever it is that they do. So I really want to offer to you all, and Billy, you and I had a conversation about this previously. Like, I want to help be the catalyst for that. I realize that you all are volunteers. I'm a paid staff member, and everybody loves to ask what I do in the wintertime. So, you know, if we can give them more things that Bo does in the wintertime, that would be great. So I want to.
That be something like an interview? I mean, like.
No, well, yeah, in part, right? But like simple things, like let's just lay out, okay, what do you guys always say about this mooring or that location or this body of water or whatever, and let's bring that into like a formalized setting and say, okay, there's never going to be a mooring within 200 feet of a fill in the blank, right? It's never happened before. You guys have never said yes to it before. Let's make that sort of the operating parameters of the WMAC. So that way, when new people come on board, they know they know where to start, right? They were already here, and we're going to bring in our expertise and history and outlook in the light of those standing orders, if you will, from the WMAC itself, right? So whoever the next chairman is, I hope that we will work together on that. I would like to, again, volunteer myself to start grooming that information from you guys and putting it together and sort of creating a permanent place for all of this information, right? Because I've gone back to Mike already since he's been gone. I've already talked to you. I'm sure people are still calling you. So we need to hold on to that. So more to come with that. Hopefully you guys will sort out your chairman at the next meeting, and then we can revisit this and keep going from there. But winter's coming, so it's a good time for projects.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
All right.
If I could, just real quick, I want to talk about the congestion real fast in West Neck. Bo, you guys do a great job with that mooring thing, and I understand. I'm actually one of the people that anchors right on the edge of that anchorage, and I try to be inside it as often as I can. But it's like whack-a-mole. I watch them all the time. They go in, they go to one side, and as soon as they get done moving all those boats over there, the guys at the other end of the harbor are anchoring up, and vice versa. So that happens all the time. But more so, what I want to speak to is the other congestion that's in the harbor. On a couple of different weekends, I had video of one of the weekends where we had the sailboat races there. I think those things are great. However, the course that they set up is really conflicting with the other uses in the harbor, and it really makes for a very sketchy situation. So over the course of the winter, maybe we can look at that as a group and see if we can't figure out how congestion we're going to allow these harbors to be. I see a problem with the for-hire recreational towboats. I'd like to have that as part of the discussion this winter. But right now, I just want to leave it at that. I just want to say that much, and then we can move on, just so that it's been said. Thanks.
No, those are
So we,
points.
in the absence of clearly defined law, which we're not going to have for every single possible conceivable scenario in the water or anywhere for that matter, we have to be able to articulate that there is some reasonable reason for us to stop an activity if it's not otherwise prohibited, right? So it's very easy if a boat's doing 20 knots within 50 feet of another boat, of an anchor boat, we can stop them for that. That's easy. When we look out in the harbor, we've got the Sunfish Regatta going on, and we've got 4 different boats wakeboarding, we've got a couple of people kiteboarding, and fill in the blank, right? Somebody swimming along. There comes a time, and it's usually from a layperson's point of view, after it should have already happened. But it has to get to the point where we can clearly identify that there is a real risk to a person doing whatever it is that they're doing, and then we can stop them doing that. And we've done that many, many times, specifically with regard to the Sunday regattas and the towed activities, right? Like there comes a point on a Sunday usually where towed activity is prohibited until further notice inside West Neck Harbor because it's just somebody's going to die. So, whether or not that needs to be codified into law, I don't know. That's for you all to kind of figure out. But it does happen there, and it does cause a lot of concern, without a doubt.
Anybody else have anything for Bo? Thanks. Thanks.
Good night, guys. I got another meeting to go to.
Thanks, Bill.
So briefing by acting chairman. So this committee has lost a lot of talent and experience over the past year. Bo talked enough about that. I think that's extremely unfortunate and to an extent was unnecessary. There's been considerable stresses this year, mainly due to just a handful of applications, but I also think that there were some, call them internal stresses, and that with more support and clarity and better communication from those we advise, I think there would have been fewer stresses and better results, better outcomes. Thankfully, John will be available. Appreciate that, John. I really enjoyed working with you over the years.
Likewise.
You are an honest, polite, probably too polite, easygoing and diligent individual, and probably took your role too seriously. I think you were probably harder on yourself than on many of the applicants that come before us. And knowing and understanding that, I think, helps explain your somewhat abrupt and premature departure. It's too bad. Let's see. So basically, just want to thank you for your service and dedication and ultimately your friendship.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Hopefully you'll get some good use out of the time. Maybe you'll buy another boat and actually use this one. A couple other items I just wanted to mention were Waterways and the comprehensive plan. If you haven't read over chapter 8, I believe it is, of the comprehensive plan, the proposed plan, please do and add your comments. I had already submitted mine. Just briefly, one of them was, I would have brought this up when Bo was here, but just greater diligence and increased holding tank inspections, I think would make a big difference, and handing out that leaflet. And the other issue was as far as testing goes, when we have spikes in the levels of Enterococcus, we really need to perform the next level test to determine the source of that pollution, because if we don't know whether it's animal or human, it's really a waste of our time and money to be doing all this testing, because it won't inform us as to whether we need to do a follow-up or how to follow up and deal with the situation. As far as Waterways and the budget, I'm not privy to the WMAC's budget or our fund. But the reporter mentioned that the pump out boat will not be a part of the proposed budget. I know BJ said that it's really, I don't know if that's what the reporter said, but I don't know whether it's correct. But I know your comment was we're waiting to get more test results, which I understand. Our former chairman's comments were, and not verbatim, but basically that the test results are good. And what problem are we trying to solve? And just a few comments in response to that. I remember a time not long ago when we didn't have a drinking water problem on Shelter Island, and then suddenly we did. And now we're spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money trying to solve that problem, which if we had looked ahead back then and probably done some additional infrastructure, spent a little more time on that issue, we wouldn't be dealing with it the way we are today. All indications are that our waters are frequented more and more by a large volume of boats that have heads aboard and people stay overnight. Other local harbors that have employed pump out boats have had an exponential increase in the amount of waste that they've taken off of those boats, over and above what they were taking off those boats with their land-based pump out facilities. So where was all that waste going? Anyway, dumping it offshore, dumping it in a harbor, I don't know where it was going, but our waters, up till now, have been able to process the waste that does get dumped, but that's going to come to a toxic level at some point. And with water temperatures going up, that will only accelerate that process because it becomes more toxic more quickly. So my point is we should not wait till we have a problem we have to solve. We should be getting ahead of that problem. We should be acting now and doing something to deal with that, as every other harbor around us has done. As for funding, our new mooring rates are generating quite a bit of money, and that money should be used to keep our waters clean for other purposes as well. And that money should continue to flow into Waterways Fund regardless of who's managing the mooring process. There's been indications that that process might move to the police department, away from WMAC, but regardless, it's a water-based activity. The funds from the mooring should flow into the Waterways Fund, as far as I'm concerned, and be used for those purposes. So that's my spiel as acting chairman. So next we've got a new business, the Birch mooring application. Christina pointed out that the lat long on the first page and on the map in the back are both off by probably inches because they have slightly different lat longs carried out to the fifth place. And that is identifying the current location. Basically, there's an existing mooring. He just wants to move it 230 feet closer to the dock, which would leave it around 170 feet off of the dock. I don't see any issues with it, the same. James?
No, I don't see any issues. I mean, he's checked off both private and riparian.
Right.
So
Is that pin where the new location is going to be, or is that pin where the old location is?
Depends where the current location is.
Okay, so can we put a pin where the new one would be, just so I can see it?
Yeah.
Is that possible? It's gonna be in closer, okay. Yeah, I got no problem with that, okay.
It's in about 170 feet off the dock.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, thanks.
If you want to read it for the record, please.
It's 41. That's the new one or the old one, or the
The one on the bottom, the new one.
one on the bottom right? 41. I'm trying to have my reading glasses on. 41.0780005. And then 72.308891.
And this is a riparian mooring, right?
Yeah, this should be riparian. And it's,
He doesn't,
I'm not aware of any other moorings.
right, neither am I, but
Stina, are you aware of any other moorings that he has?
I haven't checked.
Assuming he has no others. Does anyone else have any questions or issues on Birch?
I'm good with it.
No, sounds good.
All right, take a vote. James?
I'm good.
Pat?
I approve.
Tom?
I'm good with that.
Al?
I'm good with it.
And I'm good. Got 5-0. Okay, that's the only new business, old business. Got Big Ram LLC dock application. So,
Retire to the drawing room.
thanks, James.
Completely.
So moments before the meeting, I received a letter from Pam Demarest on the application. He asked that it be read into the meeting. Did anyone else see this? Matt, Al, Tom, you guys see this letter?
No, I have not. Is it long, or can it be read into the meeting, or?
It could be a book, we could read it into the meeting. I mean, I'll read it into the meeting. It's,
I read the letter too, but
I read it as well.
Oh, I can read it later.
Didn't get too much of a chance to get too into it, but I did read it. And it came to our mailboxes 15 minutes before the meeting started, so.
yeah, I would, regardless of whether she's got a point substantively or not, if it were up to me and I were making policy as chairman, I would say that we should not receive correspondence or submissions or applications. We should not accept them. They don't come in within 72 hours before the meeting. I mean, this is, it raises issues that really cannot be addressed in a couple of minutes. But let me read it into the meeting at any rate. The certified survey and certified site plan now submitted still reflect the same conflict in the location of mean high water. It is apparent that Mr. Barliski has contradicted his own survey produced for the title company for the sale of the property on November 5th, 2021, by affixing his seal on the updated site plan and certifying Mr. Fox's mean high water mark from April 11th, 2022. Again, while I will ask that this conflict be explained and resolved by the applicant or Mr. Berlowski in person or via Zoom, The difference in location of mean high water is significant. It's approximately 7 linear feet. The undated documents submitted have not resolved this issue. It is of extreme importance that the project location be accurately staked. To quote Chairman Needham, the building department uses it to measure the current length, and they need the mean high water mark stake. That's where they measure it from. This dock construction proposed is not in accordance with the height of the surrounding docks, nor designated or designed with the limits of the town code. I have previously written to you on the expansion of the non-conforming structure and the intrusion into the side setback, and the need for a town wetlands permit and demolition permit. At the September 30th WRAC meeting, Chairman Needham stated, John, everything you said is in this letter. I wish you hadn't spoken so much. What's going to happen to this catwalk thing, which the catwalk thing is, as I understand it, now part of the dock, and it is intruding into the setback and the height, question mark. I don't see it as a necessity for 3 feet, to be honest with you. It just makes the thing in your face. I don't see any other docks being built at that height. Mr. Casello said was going to check his records of the last 12 docks and report back to you what the height limit has been. It's part of the list. Additionally, Mr. Costello admitted that he had been given his marching orders for this project. Unfortunately, his client does not understand town code regulations and these precedent-setting requests that could continue beyond the property if the relief sought for such outrageous desires was continuously granted. 2 months ago, the WRC members agreed that any application requiring any relief from the town code or outside the historical parameters established by the council would be denied. I request this council that the application is asked to, that the applicant is asked to withdraw this application and submit new plans for a private dock designed in accordance with the town standards and codes. Chairman Needham's closing remark was this: I know you feel like you're being tortured, and I apologize, but whatever the height is here, what's going to be the height is, it's applied for rebuilding it. It's not the dock next door, so it's got broader implications, not just this, you know. I'm really getting tired of these jobs, these projects being built because it was the same over here, you know, and there was relief given over there. I'm getting really tired of this. Pam, me too. Please don't forget to extinguish. The extinguishment of the easement was Mr. Colligan's #1 concern for the Ram Head Inn dock, and it's still submitted to Suffolk County. Any approval you consider will be following a second dock on one property, regardless of what others have said. Mark is correct that any approval is premature to that execution. So, few issues raised. As far as the wetlands permit, conversations with and communication with the building department would indicate that there is no need for a wetlands permit as long as there is a permit under Chapter 53. What I do see as a continuing issue is the setback, given the placement of that, whatever we're going to call it, walkway, boardwalk, whatever it might be. Mean high water issue is just, she may have a point again, but procedurally, I think it's out of line to bring it up at this point. Anyone else have any points you want to make on this from the committee?
Yeah, I don't think that there's a discrepancy anymore with the whole, I mean, I think the mean high water, I felt we actually had resolved, or in my mind, I felt was resolved because now with a new submitted survey. I think that was the challenge before, was that there was no survey that was actually being, able to be pointed to from the site plan. I think that's been resolved to my satisfaction anyway. I don't think that there's the discrepancy, I believe, was a difference between a high water mark and a mean high water mark. And I think there is I mean, in my mind anyway, that seemed like that explained that sort of discrepancy between the two lines. So I don't see that anymore.
I like I said, like Matt said, the high water thing. I thought that we had nipped that. That was finished. We figured that out when we were at the site there. The only problem I have is that one side yard thing. And to be perfectly honest with you, I've been thinking about this a lot. The DEC is sending us approvals for permits that don't meet our code. Why can we compel the DEC to look at our code and not do that anymore? Is that a possibility? But other than that, just that one, it's a catwalk. It's new construction in the side yard. I've always had a problem with that. And I guess I'm going to leave it at that and mute.
I think John had a very good suggestion that maybe the WMAC could vote on the application as far as the dock goes up to the beach, and the walkway, maybe leave that up to the building department and the town board to decide whether that's a walkway, whether it's a part of the dock or whatever, so that the applicant can move ahead with at least getting a dock in place for a season. Just a suggestion. And I thank John for it. It was his idea. I don't know.
I would agree with Al and John's position that that the approval of the dock alone up to the high water mark, which hopefully is accurately displayed at this point, I thought it was resolved, is basically what's within our purview. I don't see anything beyond that being something we can deal with. If the town board wants to grant the variance, or they give it to the zoning board, whatever the process is, to grant the variance for that side yard setback issue, that would be up to them. I think this is it's not something I would recommend. I think there's red flags all over this issue. I think the positioning of the dock is a problem, but it's, as far as the dock itself goes, up to the mean high water, not including the walkway, appear to be within compliance. Did you want to?
I was just going to say that the dock is staked, high water is marked. I met the surveyor out there personally. And the original stake that you guys saw was like dead on. And the surveyor came and acknowledged, and staked it right there. So that the high water did get staked. Offshore got staked, 4 stakes, which was kind of ridiculous. So basically, the only, as part of the permit, giving us the permit, the building department, from what I understand, says that we don't need to go to them, that you can include, the walkway to the staircase as part of your permit, from the way I understood it from the building department. And I thought that's what you had just said previously. I mean, that this aspect of it.
Not the setback, the wetlands.
Right. Well, I was told that there was no wetlands required.
There isn't, but there is a setback issue.
That's right. That's all we're looking for leniency for, is just the setback issue.
Well, so if you wanted to consider the walkway as part of the dock, you would have a setback issue, and I wouldn't vote to give a variance on the setback. So to resolve this, at least 2 of us are considering is granting the permit, but only for the dock up to the high water mark. you would then have to deal with the town on anything above that with respect to the walkway, because we're not considering it part of the dock.
So, I mean, I think Andrea's got to speak to that, or her, Alex is on also. But it's, you know, it depends how Jim and, you know.
No, I have no comment.
We have no comment.
No comment.
May I be heard on this, please?
Who's,
It's Alex Kriegsman, Andrea's attorney.
oh, okay. What was the name? Alex Kriegsman?
Yep, my name is Alex Kriegsman, 279 Main Street, Sag Harbor, and I represent the applicant. And first, just want to respectfully remind the board, you do not issue permits. It's an advisory council. And this has dragged on long enough. And so we are respectfully asking for a roll call vote on our entire application. And if there are members who are in favor of part of it or against part of it, then they can vote against it, or they can vote in favor of it. But we can't have this drag on any longer. And so we would like a roll call vote tonight, yes or no, by everyone who's present.
Does anyone else on the committee have any comments or questions before we go for a vote? And I would say I would define your vote as to whether you are giving a yes or no on the application in total, or what qualifications you'd put on it.
This
Yes
is
or no?
Matt. Yeah, I want to say that, I think John's suggestion and Al bringing it up, and I'm one of those. I'm along that as well. It's like, I think just the dock, I would be a vote in favor. If the attorney is just asking for a vote on the overall thing and only on the overall thing, then I'm a no. I think the dock is with the dock itself, without the catwalk is fine. I think it's okay. I think it's a reasonable spot for a dock. But if they're adding in the catwalk, and that's a unitary element, then I'm a no vote. So
Thank you.
Al?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the dock as far as going up to the shoreline, and I think to go beyond that, I think it should go to the town board. And it's just it would be a variance of something that we haven't given in the past, but that would really be up to the town board as far as I'm concerned. It's I know in the building department, a walkway doesn't really count for much. Walkways are usually granted without any variance, without anything. So that could be why they're backing that up to us. But I
John?
think the town board should finalize that.
The town board is finalizing it regardless of what you do. This board is providing advice, and then the final decision will be made by the town board. So just to clarify again, we are asking for a roll call vote from everyone. It doesn't need to be qualified by what the town board is going to do, because the town board is going to proceed anyway.
I think, Mr. Kriegsman, what we're doing is we are voting on what we find acceptable and what we would advise to the town board.
Okay, fine. As long as that everyone's voting, thank you.
Tom?
I was the one who first brought up the side yard setback issue. I would be inclined to approve a dock that stopped at the high water mark. However, I believe that opens the door for further construction there, and that's going to be obviously beyond our purview and up to the town board. As a whole, it stands now, the application as a whole, I am against the application as a whole. If you were to stop the dock at the high water mark, I would be willing to accept that.
Okay, so we've got, and I agree with them, so I would say it's 5 to 0 to
4.
4-0. You have a recusal
James.
outside.
Oh.
James outside.
Right. Sorry. 4 and 1 recusal. 4 voting to approve the dock to mean high water if it were applied for in that fashion. And 4 to reject the application as it's currently written.
Thank you.
Real quick, if the application were approved with the dock ending at the high water mark, would there be some sort of resubmission of the plans to show the elevations and all that? I'd hate to keep dragging it on, but a change in the plans is a change in the plans. Just curious as to what procedure is now. That's
The
all.
procedure now is it's going to go to the town board. That's it. You've given your advice. Thank you very much.
Tom, would be up to them, I think, whether they want to redo their plans for resubmission. The height issue at the end. So I really don't know how that would be dealt with at this point.
It will be the same as it was with Birch. They requested a change and the town board didn't move until they get the final plans for updated Birch.
You got that, Tom?
Yep, yeah, that clarified things. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
How you doing?
Okay, so welcome back, James.
Oh, thank you.
Next is the Carroll application. So we had voted on it, but then there was a site inspection. And what the site inspection has indicated is that, from my perspective, what James and I were recommending at the last meeting when we voted on this, it just works perfectly. If they were to just move the dock about 5 or 6 feet to the west, the dock could come in and land right on the existing concrete walkway that's at the base of the existing stairs. And they would have 25 feet on the east as a setback, and it would solve that setback problem. And they may have to trim a foot off the distance of the pilings from 25 to 24 feet, and you'd have 25 feet on the west side as well. It seems like a really simple solution.
This was just a situation that I wanted the town board to see, and John came also to take a look at it, because it's just the situation with the lay of the land. I understand what you're saying. It just makes sense there. There's no docks that are close to it. The stairs are already there. That platform that you're referring to goes underwater a lot. And I understand that you already voted on it. I mean, like, I get that, but I did want people to physically see it, because I was kind of got under the impression nobody actually did a site visit to actually see what was there, in real life. That's why I requested that. I try to do that very seldomly, Over the 25 years I've been here, probably more than 25 years, but I've only requested it a couple of times. This doesn't make sense to put it out there. But I mean, I do understand it.
I think the site visit basically verified what we were suggesting, and it's a simple, sure, I mean, so my understanding is the rack line is below the concrete, so the only time they'd be stepping in water is at a super high tide, and that's probably during a storm, and they're probably not going out to their boat to go out in their boat during a storm anyway, so it just,
I understand. I mean, I don't think we gotta waste too much time on this one, considering you guys already voted on it. But the request was made just so they could actually physically see the reasoning.
Right.
Like, I don't like to come here with crazy applications. You guys know, I try to be as reasonable. I'm here a lot.
There's a couple out there.
Plenty of time. Everything, I try to be reasonable. I mean, it's, this is just, it just makes sense. I mean, but take it as it is, but thank you guys.
All right,
Can I speak to the board?
sure. John Needham?
John Needham. So in this transition that went on, Christina had me work on the agenda. And I put this on the agenda because for one thing, I wanted to make it clear that I changed my vote after the meeting to denial. I hadn't studied it enough to notice that there was a setback for the whole dock was intruding on the side yard setback. And then I hadn't noticed that there's a sidewalk right at the base of the bulkhead. On the plans, it says concrete and rocks. And I didn't see that as anything that was worthwhile until we did the site visit with the town board. And it's a perfect landing space for the dock, and then the transition over, you walk 6 feet and then go up the steps. And we have not, if we do that, if we go that route, we haven't set a precedent for a dock being intruding on the side yard setback. We still haven't done that. I'm hoping we can stay within, stay within those guidelines. It's been sacred ground. That's all I want to say.
Thanks, John. Let's see. So the last item is Chapter 53 revisions. Hopefully, did everyone get a chance to read over Chapter 53?
Most of it.
Yeah. My goal is to identify, or develop a list of the sections that require, of the existing code, Chapter 53, that require any sort of revision or items that we can delete or items that we need to add into the code. So my thought is to just get your feedback on reading the code, whether you identified in any particular section, if you just name the section, section 2 applicability or whatever it might be, and just mention the issue you spotted. What I'd like to do with that information is, and I'll do it not in the meeting, but offline, task 2 or 3 of us to draft new sections of that code to deal with those issues. Because I think if we each try to get involved in drafting like we did when we revised the dock code last time, it was pretty messy. It's pretty hard to corral everyone's ideas. I think it'd be easier if 2 or 3 of us took a stab at it and then circulated it and got feedback that way. So, James, anything jump out at you? And Christina, if you know, just take some notes, so in case I miss anything.
The things that we haven't really specifically talked about and haven't would include, I think, the lengths of docks. I mean, I think the commercial dock thing is way overkill, 300 foot, by 10 foot wide. I think we need to change that, for going forward to be more realistic. And perhaps we need to change the 100 foot to more, being that there are areas of Shelter Island that are perfectly suitable for having a dock. They bought the right piece of property, but the way things have either silted in or moved over the years renders a 100 foot dock almost not usable. And to things that we have talked about, there are certain areas, though precedent has been set in the past, where docks are really not suitable to have at all. And, you know, this is more of a, you know, a not so much aesthetic thing as, you know, sort of a waste type of thing, to take up town bottom for no particularly great reason other than to be able to walk out on the dock. I understand that, you know, people buy property and they expect to be able to use property to its fullest, but my feeling would be that, you know, to get this code changed so that when people are looking to have a dock somewhere, their lawyer can bring up the code and say, hey, well, you know, you're going to get a view on with this property, but it's not a great place to, and you're not going to be able to have a dock. You know, your boat is in jeopardy if you keep it here. You know, I'm not expecting the lawyer to know that, but to know that there's a code delineation between places where, you know, and, you know, there are then overly protected waters, such as, you know, creeks and, you know, that are sort of more or less undeveloped areas. You know, one of them being Dickerson Creek to some degree, where there are areas that are, you know, way up the creek that are just not suitable to put a dock in either. So I think there's a lot of probably legwork to really delineate all these places that we're thinking about.
So, I mean, you're identifying design really, and there's only so much we'll be able to draft without doing the second part, which is studying the shoreline. So that's
right.
Something we also have to do, but that's, once we get that feedback, then we'll know what areas that we can expand and what areas we should take out. All right, that's really design. You guys moved around. What happened? How's that work? Let's see, Al, did you?
They're both sort of low down on the picture. There we go. Look at that.
All right, thanks.
They're both up.
Al, anything jump out at you that you just want to identify sections where you think needs work, or have you been able to get through that? Oh,
you're muted.
I think you're muted.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
I think a lot of the variances that we've given have been in outside waters when people have requested to go over 100 feet. And we've, you know, the experienced members that have been on this committee, and some of them recently are departed, but experience has shown that oftentimes you needed to get out to 125 feet. And we've talked about codifying that for outside waters. So I think that that's a reasonable thing. The other thing that I've noticed is in other towns, they view the dock line as being one of the things that are being judged as far as whether or not you should have what length you should go out to on a dock. You take an area just like around the corner from me in West Neck, most of those docks that are usable go way beyond 100 feet. We had a recent applicant for 100 feet, but, you know, with extreme tides that we've been getting on both ends, both high and low, it also doesn't make sense to have a dock that the boats end up sitting on mud or on sand. So I think we have to be reasonable in that respect, and maybe not look so much at an arbitrary number. In some places, people should get more, and that's one of the things that I notice, and then in our deciding to be strict with the code. The other thing I'm concerned about with the concept of restricting docks and saying you can't build a dock here. If you bought a house and you anticipated over time that you're going to put a dock, or, you know, and your next door neighbor has a dock, I think it's really putting a lot on both us and on the town to be saying, hey, you can't have a dock there. If you have a federal agency, a state agency, and a precedent, I think it really makes it hard. And then, and then if you're gonna delineate an area, where does that area stop? Who's the next guy? Who's the first guy that doesn't get to have, I see those as some really challenging issues moving forward.
Okay,
Okay?
Matt?
Sure. I think, well, I managed to make my comments on a document that, like, digitally, which I cannot find. So I'm just going to go. I will find it at some point. I guess my broad brush sort of approach is this. I think.
That's all I'm really looking for at this point, because I have a lot of detail in mind, and I'm just kind of looking to get the
Yeah,
overview.
I mean, I had a bunch of definitional things and the way that things could work together, but broadly speaking, I guess I maybe I have an opposite view, I guess, or not opposite, but a different view from Al, and that what I guess I would like to see more of a prioritizing the town's interest and the public's interest in the waters and access, and I think that we need to bring that in there. I think so right in the beginning, like making sure that that's actually something that is explicitly considered. So we don't have a situation where people can come in and say, as of right, I want to be able to do this. And I think, to some extent, who's the first person? It's like, well, a lot, it's been, hundreds of years of development on Shelter Island. I think a lot of the places where docks make sense have been built. I think we're now dealing with situations where either a dock already exists, or it's a situation that in the past hasn't really merited a dock for whatever reason. Maybe there wasn't a house there, or whatever, or there wasn't a person who was interested in the water, which is certainly possible. But I think that needs that. Obviously, I'm not saying that none should be built, because I think that's not true. But I think more explicit acknowledgement that the town and the public has an interest in maintaining space that isn't necessarily encumbered by a dock. And I think that does get to the sort of the regions. I think there are areas where it's like, look, there are docks everywhere, and I think that's one more dock when 9 out of 10 properties along the water have a dock. It's like, yeah, they're blocking that last person. I don't think that really makes sense. But I think there are areas where they're few and further between, and I think that's really where I think it's going to be taking a more challenging look, I guess, for all of us to kind of come to an agreement on what makes sense and what doesn't. I think that gets to that point. I think James was making about sort of areas where, hey, this, and start to try to delineate where places where it does make sense and where it does. And then I think one would be looking at the map and saying, hey, where do we have a predominance of docks, and where do we, generally speaking, not have them? And obviously, it's looking at the shoreline. The final thing I was in looking at other, and this might be, well, it's going to be a challenge. I just sort of put it out there because I was looking at other towns' laws, and correct me if I'm wrong, but East Hampton actually has a fee for dock inspection. And does anybody run into that one or notice that? No. Okay. But I mean, I just noticed it when I was looking through. I don't know whether it's actually assessed, whether it's just on the books, whether I'm misreading it. It's because it's just something I saw in there. But they have a fee in there so that people can go and they can have a line that would go and then fund somebody to go, and the buildings department going out and, hey, do the steps, the access steps, are they in shape? Are they missing a step? And actually making that so it's funding itself. I don't want to see a situation where where I sort of feel with moorings as well, where it's sort of funding other stuff. It's like, as a town, we should be coming around with money and allocating things. There's a difference from a fee and a tax, right? And so that's something that I think we need to be sensitive to. But if we're asking if we are asking to the buildings department or somebody else to go out and as a part of their regular work to go in and check on these things, then that's reasonable to look at that and make sure that it's funded, and that those expenses that are added for the town's obligations are assessed on the people that are really incurring. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to, well, whatever. I'll leave it at that. I think that's I just raised that, and it was something I noted and I felt was interesting and made my eyebrows raise.
Well, it's an issue. It's in our code to do that. They're required to maintain the docks, but there is no. There's really no follow-up, no fee, no arrangement. It's a good.
Well, it is already the building department's purview. They just don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, not that, and they're busy. I mean, I'm not saying that, there's, you go in there today and one of them's on vacation and the other one's crazy. So
okay.
only in the nicest way am I saying that.
Right. But it's exactly that. It's sort of like, but is it, it's probably not on the radar because nobody's, and so I think if we want to push it onto there, we actually got to come with something as well, or at least, not say, hey, do this, more. Bo is in here and say, well, he's got all these bunch of different activities they're actually going out to cover. But where's the money coming from and that sort of thing. And I think it would be helpful for us to be trying to bring that both. We're putting on requirements and we're asking people to do stuff. Well, theoretically, we are, saying buildings are, supposed to go out and inspect, that we're being sensitive to resources as well to support it. That's all.
All right, good. Tom, I know you had raised the maintenance issue once before. Did you have anything else when you looked through?
I haven't had a chance to properly look through that, but I will be redlining it there this week. There's a lot of good points which were just brought up regarding where a dock goes, where it shouldn't go. And I believe that, an inventory of around the island, Matt made that excellent map. I believe that, that should be part of the discussion as well. Right off the top of my head, I really don't have anything on this right now. The other thing that I do have a concern with, though, is that I do have a different belief, as some may, as to riparian rights. Just because you got waterfront property, you don't necessarily get to build something on town property. So that's something I would like to discuss at least further as we go through this code. But right now, that's really it on this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, there is plenty of law on the issue of riparian rights, and I think better definition of that could be employed in the code, and something we'll address. And certainly the shoreline, Matt's map is great, and that is a big part of this is going around the shoreline and identifying areas, or at least characterizing areas in the most objective way possible. It's just haven't got to that step yet. So as soon as we get on the, like I said, the drafting and that review need to be done kind of simultaneously, but I'm going to be chasing down people in the next month and see who wants to do what.
Yeah, when it comes to just go ahead and designate me somewhere, and I'd be more than happy to help.
You're out there, so.
Yeah. Yep. And I have accessibility too, so.
All right, that's great. That's a good start. I appreciate it. That is all that's on the agenda. Is there anything else?
I have 2 comments if I got time.
1 minute.
Very quick. Congratulations, good job, great job.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to comment on the shellfish, that emergency shellfish closure act. The town attorney and the town engineer and Bo are working on the emergency closure, and then there was a long-term closure issue that was open for comment up until September 25th. And the town wrote to comment on that also, that they didn't think it was appropriate that the anchorages be shut down the way they were proposed. Unfortunately, the letter that the town sent out didn't include the largest area that was closed, which is the mooring area for Compass Harbor Marina. They drew an arc 300 yards from the corner of my dock and just said, no more shellfishing there.
For the same reason.
Yeah, Tom didn't think that was an issue. Anyhow, I didn't like that at all. To me, it implies that the water's polluted there. That's not something I want customers to be looking at or the public be thinking that. So I wrote my own letter asking, giving reasons why that shouldn't occur. And so that's out there. We'll see what happens to those things. The Daring Harbor issue. I'm trying to pass on a couple of things that maybe I only know about. There was an agreement. There was the village, the Daring Harbor mayor, and the supervisor got together, and I was at the meeting, probably a couple other people. And
Decade?
decade ago?
No, when? What decade?
Oh,
year?
what decade? This has to be like back in the Lou Sherman days.
Okay.
Right, no, we've talked about it.
Yeah, so the village wanted to go out 1,500 feet. But that municipal dimension is, as I understand it, is for surface water control. The town has rights to the bay bottom because of the Nichols patent. So how do you reconcile that?
I can't really give you the explanation that was given to me, but the Nichols patent is not the controlling document. That's the best I can say. It's not
On the bottom?
on the bottom. That this is covered in state law.
State, that's interesting, because
Yeah.
I just was reading, if you read New York navigation law, they basically cede control of the bottom in Nassau and Suffolk County.
Right.
The law for the rest of the state is different than Nassau and Suffolk
Yes.
County because of all the various patents.
Yeah.
And the one impacting our area is the Nichols patent. So I'm not sure what other,
I'll just go over at the time what the theory, what the thinking was.
Yeah.
The thinking was, let's make a compromise. The town will allow docks to be built along the shoreline. And the town will have, will be doing the permitting on those. So that's why we review those permits. That's where it came from. And in exchange, the village would have a 500-foot swath to put moorings in, surface activities. That was the trade, and everybody was happy. Walked away, shook hands. You're not gonna find it in writing, I doubt, anywhere.
Is that what you're trying to
Yeah.
to
It's not in
solidify?
writing, and 500 to 1,500 foot line, that's the area that we are working on to work out an agreement of who does control it.
Yeah.
New York State navigation law, whereas the authority of responsibility navigational activity under the aforesaid within 1,500 feet of the village lies with the village. That's 46A1 of the New York State navigation law. But that is kind of what you're saying here, Bill, that's the above. That's navigation. That's not really directly addressing.
That's how we've always treated it.
Yeah. However, I believe the research was done and it came back that the Nichols patent does not control here. I know, but in reality, it's gonna be what's
Status quo.
happened. Yeah, we're just kind of getting it in writing and really nothing is changing. I mean, they're gonna do the 500. And there's gonna be a little code tweaking, I think, these are details to be worked out, to make sure that the town and the village don't contradict each other. So there'll be a little of that based on the agreement that is finalized.
Great. The last thing is just a reminder that, before I drift away into the sunset, is that the docks that were, when the Pandion subdivision was put together, there are docks that are recorded. I think I never saw it, but it was agreed by the developer that on the deed is the description of the dock, the length and the location.
Right, I mean, there were two other docks that were allowed, right?
Really? I thought the subdivision only allowed one communal dock. But we can-
I thought there were two parcels.
This is for parcel one and parcel 3 and 4.
Could each have a 100-foot dock, I think.
Yeah.
There were, yeah, separate docks in addition to the,
But they're not gigantic docks or.
There's an agreement that was gonna be 100-foot max, no, without exception. And that number one was gonna go as far to the south as possible, so it wasn't interfering with the Burns Road mooring field.
Right.
So that was how that location was come up with. And I did a lot of study on depths and stuff. And so when that comes before us, it's supposedly something in the deed.
Oh, it's either, okay.
Supposedly.
Well, you're coming to every meeting, right?
Yes.
If not Zoom.
Great job, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to talk about this pump out boats, which I want to put my own pitch for it. On Cocos Harbor, I think sooner or later this will be necessary, and it's better to do it sooner than later. We have the anchorage in front of Mashamak. We have Ramstead Inn, which also brings boats. We have Cocos Harbor Marina and so forth. So there's lots of boats coming to Cocos Harbor, and sooner or later, we're gonna have a problem there. And I think the quality of the boaters is also declining because there's more and more power boaters coming in, and they usually have less and less skills as opposed to sailors. And not everybody observes the rules that you can only discharge overboard 3 miles offshore. Okay, those people don't know. The toilet gets full, they all empty, just open through your valve. And also, I see 3 download members here at the meeting. You guys raised the mooring fees, okay? I used to pay $125 per 3 years. Now it's, I forgot what it is, 150 every year, something like that. So at least some of this money should go towards things like pump out boats and other things to improve the infrastructure here on the water.
And we also say that there is some money available through the WQI funds as well, specifically in the legislation is the pump out fund. So funding shouldn't be,
as well as
long as
the state grants.
and state grants, absolutely.
Right.
As long as the money is found somewhere, because this is a really good purpose and not that much money after all. Okay, so we're not talking multi-million-dollar investment, we're talking just a pump out boat.
Yeah. Along with what you're saying, increased enforcement, as Bill has mentioned numerous times, just making it plain that people are serious here about getting the boat pumped out.
Yeah. They're dye testing.
Right. I mean, they have not on a super widespread.
Yeah, I didn't want to, I was going to bring it up while Bo was speaking today, but it's like a handful of times they've done it. And, they're busy, but this is a big issue.
So
And
maybe some of the money could be used to pay somebody else to do the tie test, like.
I don't know if they have to be a law
I don't know.
enforcement officer to board, is that part of it?
probably, because I went through that with Peter Vielbig, and he initially thought that they would need probable cause, but then he looked into it further and determined that he was informed that no, they do not.
I remember the discussion well, and you guys did a nice job kind of pressuring that a little bit, saying that, hey, you board boats to inspect other things, why not inspect this? And I think Peter admitted to the fact that, yes, we will definitely start to increase that look, for the Y valves and everything else, and make sure that everything is followed.
It's tough to nail it down, and it's, but anecdotally, a operator of a local marina, not Cockles, that stores a lot of sailboats, said that every boat that goes out in the spring has got the Y valve wired closed, and 90% of them are cut open when the boat comes back in. So, and those are sailboats.
Yeah, yeah, and our boaters, forget it, I mean. But I just wanted to add something to it. Enforcement is very difficult, okay? And we cannot enforce even gross violations, you know. We call the constable and they are, you know, to their boat to Southwood for engine maintenance or something. So the best enforcement is if you call the pump out boat, it shows up in 10 minutes.
You're right, you're absolutely right.
Has to be one in Columbus Harbor, one in Derrick Harbor, maybe one in West Neck. That's too much.
It'll be nice to have one at the start, but appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else? Motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
I would like to second that motion. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Nice work.